It's about history, policy, and impact. A new perspective on current affairs, bringing experience, insight, civility, and scholarship to the urgent issues of today. It's about our past, present, and future. Your host, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and journalist, Douglas Blackman. From the University of Virginia's Miller Center, this is American Forum.
Welcome back to American Forum. I'm Doug Blackman. On the final day of the Democratic National Convention last summer, Americans were introduced to a previously obscure man with no real history in politics. His name is Khizr Khan. Born in Pakistan, a lawyer, an immigrant who with his wife Ghazala became American citizens in 1986, attended Harvard University, raised a family of 3 boys, one of whom, named Humayun, became a soldier, and then in 2004 was tragically killed as a U.S. Army captain while saving his unit from an attack by 2 suicide bombers in Iraq. At the Democratic Convention, Mr. Khan castigated Republican nominee Donald Trump for his assertion that all Muslims should be banned from entry to the United States. Standing with his wife beside him, Mr. Khan's speech criticizing Mr. Trump for intolerance electrified the convention and became a landmark moment in the 2016 presidential contest. Public response to Mr. Trump's subsequent comments about Mr. Khan and what were perceived as condescending remarks toward Mrs. Khan and their grieving Gold Star family inflicted heavy damage on Mr. Trump's popularity. There were also harsh rebukes, many of them false, lobbed at the Khans. But something bigger happened too. For an enormous number of Americans, Khizr Khan emerged as more than just another voice in a bitter election season. He became a deeply sympathetic representative of millions of law-abiding, patriotic Muslim Americans in communities throughout our country. For millions, he was the first such personal symbol to capture their imaginations and convey the contradictory sense of patriotism, injustice, and anxiety felt in recent times by so many Muslims in our country. The election is over now, and we've invited Mr. Khan to join us for a conversation about his story, but more focused on the future, on the America he hopes to live in going forward, the country he hopes to see his grandchildren grow up in. It's an honor to be with you.
Likewise, thank you for inviting me. What an honor to be guest of American Forum.
Until the time that the Clinton campaign approached you, had you been focused on her candidacy? Obviously, you had heard remarks by Mr. Trump that troubled you and things that others had said that troubled you. But did you consider yourself a politically active person at that stage?
Not at all. We are private people, and we have always lived private life. And of course, we have had our political preferences based on issues and based on people that we have in the past voted as Republican. We have in the past voted as Democrats based on our preference and depending on the issues that we feel strongly towards. We had visited some of our friends and some of friends that have small children. And whenever we would go to visit them or they would come to visit us, their children would ask me, because I am an attorney, they would ask me a question: are we going to be thrown out of this country? Are our parents going to be thrown out and we will be left alone here? 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, children will ask that question, and that had bothered us. I would try to assure them that I know law a little bit. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I know the law, that is not true. There are safeguards in the Constitution of the United States, but because of them being scared, that statement would not do any good. Their parents will tell us that they don't do any homework. They say that we go to school and our class fellows bully us and say, well, you're bad people, you will be thrown out of here anyway. So we considered that should we go, we decided that we will go. What we would say, that was the reason that what we said behind those statements. such were the thoughts.
And so then the Clinton campaign comes to you, initially just wanting to do a presentation more about your son, but then as the convention grows nearer, if what I've read is correct, they then begin to ask for more involvement on your part, and then ultimately say, would actually like for you to appear on stage and give remarks. And then did they suggest what you would say?
All those children's worries and our observations were in the back of my mind, so I said, well, let's see if I could write something. And I wrote about 6 pages of my sentiments and my thoughts.
More than 2 minutes.
And I read those 6 pages to Mrs. Khan, and she would be watching the clock. It'll be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And she said, this is not going to work. You have to cut it down. So I will trim it and bring it to 10 minutes, not good, 8 minutes, not good, 5 minutes, not good. Finally, we got to about 2 minutes, and that's what was the decision, that I will say those things. Waiving of the Constitution wasn't part of the original speech. It's interesting story. I have put on the coat and we are ready to walk out of the room, and I am checking my pockets, and I feel that I have something in my pocket, and I pull it out, and of course it was Constitution, and we are walking in the hallway, and I tell Ghazala, Mrs. Khan, that I have this Constitution in my pocket. You think it'll be advisable to pull it out? She said, you shouldn't do that unless you take the permission from them. So I asked the producer in the green room that I want to do this when I make reference to the US Constitution. And this is a senior producer, and he is standing right there. He walks towards me and stands right here, so close to me. And he looks at me and he said, Mr. Khan, are you sure you're going to do this? I said, yes. And his eyes welled. He tells me, he said, do this. This is going to be such an impactful gesture. Do that. Because of his experience, he could tell what impact it will have.
And it was, as I think I told you in the green room before we came on set. I was there that night too, and I was there in a journalistic role, following around someone who was already a very high-profile speaker, and so I was back in that space at an earlier point. And the campaign was very closely paying attention to every single word of those remarks, and there were debates about every possible change up to the last minute. But you didn't have that scrutiny. I mean, it sounds like this is that moment you just described was as much sort of input as there was of any kind.
And there had been allegations and all. This Constitution was placed in my pocket and all that. Look at the condition of this document. I highlighted, I put notes on it. These are some of the Thomas Jefferson's statements that he has made about our government and its system, and Justice Scalia's statement, and some of the phone numbers. I don't find piece of paper, I jotted down on it. So here are some of the dates that are important that I remember, some of the dates underlined here. And so it always is in my pocket.
But then afterwards, some of the things that were said in response to that, Mr. Trump's criticisms of you, the reference that he made to that perhaps your wife wasn't allowed to speak, but then also pushback of other kinds came back. There were things published that said that you were an advocate of Sharia law, that you were being paid by the government of Saudi Arabia, that you had practiced, that essentially your interest in all this was so that you could be in the business of helping people get visas, that high income individuals can, if they have a certain amount of money, it's easier to get a certain kind of visa. But so there was a great deal of response along those lines. Just tell us how you reacted to that and clear up any of that that you'd like to.
Oh, I would very much like to, now that you have invited me. First, I have never practiced immigration law. I've never sponsored anybody. Second thing, this Sharia law business is that those who allege that Sharia law or the fear of Sharia law, I want to invite them to read the United States Constitution one more time. One more time. because they fail to understand the safeguards against any religious implications that exist already long time ago. So I invite them to read it so they will be heartened that that threat is bogus threat. There is no room for that. The reason is that there is no such thing as Sharia law. The things that they imply because of their ignorance, most of the Muslim countries' laws are based on the laws of the colonists that left, British, French, Dutch. They left those laws in those countries, combined with the local tradition, local laws, Islamic laws, hodgepodge of those laws. For example, I have a very significant case, and I have testified many a times, telling the US courts even not to give courtesy to the laws or the decisions of the Muslim countries because there is no equal status of litigants. If there is a man and a woman in the court of some of these countries, they are not treated equally, which is totally against the equal protection of the laws of United States. So if these folks that fear Sharia is coming or Sharia will come at all, they are unfamiliar, unfortunately, or some pretend to be unfamiliar with the precautions, with the safeguards that United States system, United States legal system, and the Constitution has in place. So no fear about Sharia law. I had written an article about 25 years ago, and some of the folks that criticized initially, once they read that article, I was trying to explain what are the sources of the Islamic law, what are the sources that are considered when drafting Islamic law. And later on, they themselves acknowledged that after reading this article, this is an academic article, this has nothing to do in defense of Sharia or in defense of anything. So that's that. Being paid. Somebody sent me a link and I read that article. It's written by a reporter out of San Francisco, and he pastes a deposit slip of $375,000 paid to me as alleged. So he pastes a deposit slip of the bank, $375, but the name of my law firm is R.J. Khan. My law firm's name is not R.J. Khan Law. And I go with K.M. Khan Law Office. So somebody pointed that out. Then there is another deposit slip. Oh, this is the corrected version. And even in the corrected version, it says K.M. Khan Law Offices, and mine is K.M. Khan Law Office. So he writes at the bottom of that, he said, people, get it right at least, second time get it right. So it is that. There is no such thing, there is no connection. I wish they would have paid me. I wish they would pay me now, but there is no such thing, and I think the matter is much more serious than myself or all these allegations.
As the presidential campaign began, and Donald Trump, I guess he starts off with reference to Mexican immigrants and rapists, but it's some time after that before there's a specific reference to Muslims. But when did you begin to pay close attention to Donald Trump or to these ideas that were being expressed by him, and the reactions that you had?
Well, we are citizens of this country with equal rights and 2 ears and eyes, and we were listening and we were paying attention. And then throughout the process of primaries, when this candidate is making those statements, we are listening to the complaints and the worries of these children and our relatives. One of our niece called us. She says that I wear this scarf on my head and I'm coming back to United States after visiting, and this statement has been made. Should I remove it when I arrive at United States? And I insisted, and I told her that no, you must continue to wear what you choose to wear. There is no one that is going to. But she said, I'm scared. This was telling us that somebody needs to stand up and say something and remind the country and remind the nation and remind the then candidates that there are safeguards and there are protections in the Constitution of the United States. So we were paying attention and we were listening and we were getting concerned about the direction of the political discourse, where it is taking us.
You've had what, as a result of all this, became this astonishingly affirming experience about American values and the support that you've gotten. But even by your own description, in the past, many Muslim Americans and other minorities that you know have described these hateful things that were done, or people being bullied, or having or people's reactions to some of the things said by Mr. Trump, which he in his defense, he's also tried to contain to some degree, though it's a little difficult to tell. But so there have been these incidents in the past. Did you experience incidents in the past in which you felt that America was not being particularly open to a Muslim immigrant?
I don't want to sound that I am not telling you the truth, but I'm telling you the truth. If you ask Mrs. Khan, she will tell you exactly the same thing. If you ask our children, they will tell you exactly the same thing. We have been fortunate that we have not experienced what other Muslims may have experienced. Our experience in the United States, being the citizens, being the immigrant citizens, have been very positive. From day one, very first day when we arrived here, and Mrs. Khan will tell you, we had two small children, Shahryar and Captain Humayun Khan were very small, 3-year and 2-year-old. We offloaded our luggage. I had rented a small 1-bedroom apartment. We are hauling our stuff into that apartment from the car. Few minutes after we closed the door and we are trying to open the boxes, and there is a knock at the door, and a neighbor with 2 sacks of groceries standing at the door. And she said, "We just saw that you have small children. You just came in and all that. We brought this for you."
And this was long ago.
This is first day in 1980. We received it, we spoke with her, and she said, "I'll let you rest. You must be tired and all that. If you need anything, we are next door." 5-10 minutes after that, there is another knock at our door. And there is another lady with an ice box, milk, water, other things in it. So "We know that you have just arrived and all. We have brought this for you, and please let us know if you need anything else." They did not ask us what religion you have. They did not ask us where you came from. Out of the goodness of their heart, out of the generosity of their heart, they came to help a neighbor. It is that is what we have experienced. That is deep down in our heart, the gratefulness. So you will say, "Well, this must be a perfect place on earth." Not at all. There is so much room to make it better. So much room to make it better. And I agree and I admit, and we all must work to make it better. But that has been our experience. Very positive, generous. This institution where we are sitting, University of Virginia, had been so generous to us, to my family, to our children. Not only it has given them education, but it has taught them value of public service. It was that value that Captain Humayun Khan is hero of this country today. It is that value that was taught to him right here under the 4 walls of this wonderful institution. So we have been blessed, and our experience had been very positive. Not to deny that other Muslims have not experienced. Yes, they do, they have, they speak to me, they speak to us. My solution to that type of conversation, that type of hatred is one, interfaith relation. And this is my experience throughout the country. Wherever there is stronger interfaith relation, there is less hatred. Somehow, 1.6 billion Muslims in the world have been quiet throughout these 15, 20 years. They have been standing on the sidelines and let a small number, a very small number of criminals, of terrorists, of violent people define the religion. That is not acceptable anymore. I have implored, I was in Chicago and I spoke to about 20,000 Muslims present there, and I told them that no more standing quiet. You must denounce terrorism, you must denounce violence, and tell the world that This good religion, good faith had been hijacked, had been perverted and presented to the world. Unless we do this, world will continue to see us through the activities and through the actions of these violent and terrorist people.
I want to ask you a more complicated question. There have been many, many Americans who have been, as you described a minute ago, so terribly traumatized by these events that are associated, perhaps unfairly, but directly, with a radical kind of Islam. I myself, a close friend of mine, was captured by Al Qaeda years ago and murdered. And then at the Republican convention, before you spoke, there was the mother of one of the men killed at Benghazi, who spoke very powerfully and harshly. But so your son died as a result of radical Islamic fundamentalism. My friend died as a result of a radical form of that. The Benghazi mother's son died. But so what do you say to that idea, to someone who, with good faith, says to you, but there really is a problem with Islam?
Yes. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And 1.6 billion Muslims bear the responsibility of that because they have been quiet, because they have not spoken, they have not rejected. There are, in each faith, there are certain, in scripture, there are some terms and some mentions of things, but we have to move forward from there. We have to develop, we have to redefine terms, to live together, to move forward, to move humanity forward, to move ourselves forward. I reject any violence, and especially, and as you have heard me say that, the good religion of Islam had been perverted by these terrorists, by these, they have some long-standing animosities, some geopolitical reasons that they have dragged my religion in it. These terrorists, these violent people must be rejected. We all need to, as Muslim, I speak to Muslims, that we need to become part of the society. We need to stand up and we need to be counted as equally patriotic Muslims, concerned and responsible for its safety. No tolerance, no acceptance for any violent behavior. Second, we need to revise, and I think government is very seriously considering that who comes into this country. Sometimes people's fear are because being unfamiliar. All the refugees coming from Syria, there is a 2-year wait period for them in the camps outside the United States. They are vetted properly. So stricter, proper vetting is highly recommended. I support that policy. But alongside that, there is another solution, and that is to joining hand with the communities. Joining hand instead of exclusion of Muslim community from creating a safe environment, inclusion of Muslim community in asking them to participate in the protection and in the safety of the country and safety of the nation and communities is the solution. Once that community becomes part of the solution, you will have very little room for somebody to create mischief.
Mr. Khan, thank you for being with us. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much.
As our viewers know, we produce American Forum at the Miller Center at the University of Virginia. As this episode closes, we'll hope you'll take a few seconds to watch a clip from a short film recently produced by 3 UVA students about Captain Humayun Khan's time here at Thomas Jefferson's University before his deployment and death in Iraq. If you'd like to send us a comment about this episode or join our ongoing conversations about American leadership and restoring civility to our national discourse, go to the Miller Center Facebook page or follow us on Twitter. My handle is @DouglasBlackman. To watch other episodes of American Forum, share them with your friends, join our email list, or read a transcript of this dialogue, visit us at millercenter.org, American Forum. I'm Doug Blackman. See you again next week.
He was the best leader that you could possibly imagine. He was friendly and he was always there for everyone, and even at his memorial in Iraq, They said that he was a soldier's officer.
Everyone we spoke to described Humayun Khan as reserved and humble, but also spirited. We spoke to his friend, Nizam Masagi, over Skype.
He was very funny, I will tell you that. He shared jokes, he was the light of the party.
I asked his parents if Humayun ever revealed the fun he was having at UVA.
There are just so many stories.
Like the time 2 different women bid to win a date with Humayun at a UVA charity fundraiser.
He got the highest bid. He took them, they stop, that's enough. I will take you both.